Hear the gospel according to Supertramp. There are times when all the world's asleep. The questions run too deep for such a simple man. Won't you please tell me what we've learned? I know it sounds absurd. Please tell me who I am. In the name of the living God, amen. Well, so good morning, church. Thank you. My name is Mike Kinman. My pronouns are he, him. I am kind of an itinerant preacher in the church right now, kind of between a couple things, and I have spent just a wonderful long weekend here at St. Thomas Church, meeting with various groups and preaching last night and this morning. And your hospitality has been incredible, and in fact, I have to say, your hospitality has crossed that line from incredible into Christ-like when you consider that I am a proud Missouri Tiger in the heart of Jayhawk country. Let me just try this. M-I-Z? Okay, we got some friends here. There we go. And it's great. I love it here. And part of it is, I've been a parish priest for almost, 28 years, and I live for Sunday mornings. I love Sunday mornings. And yet at the same time, I actually wish we worshiped more at night. The mornings are full of light, life, and energy. And I said this to the group at 8:45. I love the vibe in this room. I love your music. Oh my gosh, the choir is amazing. And you all have great voices. I love your spirit. And wow, in a hard time, you all have brought your joy game. And I don't know about you, but I need some joy right now. Because when we heard Jeremiah cry, my joy is gone. Grief is upon me. My heart is sick. My heart was sighing. Oh, preach that, brother. Amen? Let me try that again. Amen? There we go. Okay. So thank you. Boy, talk about, is there a balm in Gilead? You are the balm in Gilead. Thank you for bringing the joy this morning. We are the Who's down in Whoville, and I hope no Grinch ever takes our joy away. And that's what I love about mornings. And there's something that happens when the sun goes down, when the light recedes and all the things we can see kind of fade away, when the joy of the morning can really seem far away, and Jeremiah's cry rings loud in our ears and weighs heavy on our heart. I love being together in the light, and sometimes I crave us being together in the darkness even more. Supertramp helps me again, because down in your soul, there's a hole you don't want to see. Every night, it's the same old story. Darkness comes and you can't fight it free. Sometimes I think too much of our imagery involves light being good and dark being bad. I get why that is. For much of human existence, night has been a place of fear, a fear of what we can't see, of hidden threats in the shadows, of questions that we shut out in the busyness of the day, but in the silence of the night, they kind of come out. Fear that what we see in the light, everything that we base our life on, might not be as real as it seems, and yet there is a beauty and a possibility to darkness. Some pretty awesome stuff happens at night. Night is when lovers grapple and collapse in each other's arms, and the vulnerability of intimacy and the blanket of darkness makes space for our hearts to speak while our brains lie in repose. Night is when we trade our Ann Taylor suits for our Shein bodycons and dance until sunrise finds us walking home with our heels in our hands. Or when you get to be my age, it's more like curling up on the couch and losing myself in the life of Carmi on the bear, or wondering if I actually have an innie like Mark S. Night. Sometimes late at night when sleep will not come or return is when the questions come out that cut us to our core. At night when the world's asleep, the questions run so deep for such a simple man. Won't you please tell me what we've learned? I know it sounds absurd. Please tell me who I am. Now, in case you're not familiar, that's from a song called The Logical Song by 70s rock group Supertramp. Lyricist Roger Hodgson calls The Logical Song the most personal song I ever wrote. So this was like 1978, 1979. Supertramp was on the rise. All the dreams he thought he had were coming true. Wealth and fame, all the things he had been told would solve all his problems and make him happy. And during the day, the busyness kept the questions, the self-doubt, the subtle, deep emptiness at bay. But at night, when the world's asleep, the questions ran deep. Please tell me who I am. Hodgson said the lyrics to this song just poured out of him. They were a reflection on this gap between just the wonder and hope he'd had as a child and the creeping disillusionment he felt in adulthood. Of a world shaped by systems of education, business, politics that were continually conspiring to convince him that if he just trusted their logic, if he was responsible and practical, dependable and cynical, if he just accepted the logic of the world, if he just fit in and tried to be like everybody else, he would be happy, except he wasn't. The world literally called him a rock star, an idol, told him he had it all, but when he looked in the mirror, that wasn't what he saw. When he looked in the mirror, he wasn't sure what he saw. During the day, preoccupied with all the responsibilities, he could play the role. It was comfortable to play the role, but at night he would look in the mirror and the question would come out, please tell me who I am. Anyone felt that? Amen. Our life actually does sometimes gift us with moments of clarity. I found they usually happen in the daytime, and they're often too few. I remember it was early in the morning in an ice storm in St. Louis, Missouri, when my first child was born. And I remember holding him in my arms, and I knew that nothing in the world mattered more than this amazing tiny human. I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I just met you and I would stand in front of a moving bus for you. Love you, Schrader. I was in awe of the depth of meaning emerging from this new life into mine. And yet, the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon. For the next 26 years, I have certainly not loved him any less or intentionally neglected being a dad, and that feeling is still there when I stop and think about it, like right now. And the feeling fades in the light of day. Games and plays get missed for work. Life goes on. The child becomes an adult. And now I wake up in the night and I wonder where all the time went, where the passionate certainty of that moment went. And I wonder who I am. Many years ago, my friend Chaim was riding in a car with his best friend when out of nowhere a delivery truck came and smashed into them, killed his friend instantly, and it left Chaim in critical condition. Weeks later, weeks into his miraculous recovery, Chaim and I were sitting at a cafe one night, and he looked at me. I'll never forget this. He looked at me and said, you know, when I woke up from the accident in the ICU, I was so grateful to be alive. And I looked at Sarah, and I looked at the kids, and it was all so clear what was most important in my life, exactly what I needed to do, exactly who I wanted to be. And then he paused, and his eyes began to get tears in them. And he said, but I can feel that feeling fading. I can feel me going back to the way I was before, and I don't want to, and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Well, that's a phrase, isn't it? How many times have I thought that these past weeks and months? Oh my gosh, I just don't know what to do. How many nights have I woken up in the middle of the night with that question bouncing around my mind? How many times, even in the light of day, have I found myself just standing there, almost just imperceptibly shaking my head, thinking to myself as I look at the state of the world, as I look at a reality that looks more and more like a bad soap opera told to a world gone mad. And I think, this isn't working. There's got to be a better way. There's got to be a different way. Who are we? And in this crazy world, would someone please tell me who I am? And so I keep coming back every Sunday, as you do, to places like this. And I come here hoping to find a community of fellow questioners, a community of fellow wanderers, a community of dreamers, hoping for some wisdom and solace and meaning, hoping for a different way. And so we come together, and I just see your beautiful faces, and I sing this beautiful music, and I hear wonderful stories of the incredible ministry of St. Thomas Church, and my heart just fills to overflowing. And then I hear this morning's gospel, and it just confuses the heck out of me. I mean, when I looked at this gospel that I was supposed to preach this Sunday, I felt like I'd just say, Alex, I'll take weird stuff Jesus said for 1,000. Okay, on one level, it's not so bad. Jesus tells a story about debt reduction. I can get behind that. Anybody with student loans, credit card bills, or denied medical claims can get behind that. But then he says this, and I tell you, make friends for yourself by means of dishonest wealth, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into the eternal homes. Whoever is faithful in a very little is faithful also in much. And whoever is dishonest in a very little is dishonest also in much. If then you have not been faithful with the dishonest wealth, who will entrust you the true riches? And I am like, this gospel needs to come with a secret decoder ring. And so I'm thinking, really, did something get lost in the translation? So I looked in other translations. It says the same thing, so it's not that. And I read it again, and I read it again, and I read it again. And then I just sat there. And I stopped and remembered. And I started to remember what some of the people I have known and read who seem to have found the deepest meaning in their life, who seem to actually be pretty good at that question of, please tell me who I am, have said. I remembered several years ago sitting at a dinner celebrating the 250th birthday of the city of St. Louis. And I was seated next to a tribal elder from the Wajaje Nation, what we more commonly call the Osage. And at one point, frankly, mostly driven by my feelings of shame and desire to ease my own discomfort, I kind of leaned over to him and said, wow, it must be difficult to be at what was essentially a celebration of when we took your land. And I'm sure I had hoped for some words of absolution, recognition that, oh no, you're one of the good, enlightened colonizer descendants. Instead, after listening patiently, my dinner companion paused, and he sighed ever so softly, and he said with just the most wonderful, just gentleness, patience, and love, this is where you always get it wrong. You didn't take our land. It wasn't ours then. It's not yours now. The land is always the land. I went out to LA and sat with amazing people from the Gabrielino Tongva Nation, and I heard the same thing. The land is not an it. It's not a commodity to be owned and used. The land is a who. You can't own the land. You can't own anything. And then I remember reading Gustavo Gutierrez, amazing, the father of liberation theology, who writes, all forms of idolatry are rooted in possession, money, land, power. True liberation will come only when those idols are unmasked and people are placed above property. And then I remember Dr. King, who we sometimes forget was voted the most hated man in America when he was martyred. Largely because he wrote things like this: we have allowed the means by which we live to outdistance the ends for which we live. We have allowed our technology to outrun our theology. We have allowed our money to outdistance our morality. As the great James Cone later said, Martin Luther King Jr. realized near the end of his life that without economic justice, civil rights would be nothing but a pious hope. That is why he turned to the poor, and that is why he became dangerous to the government. I said, watch what you say, or they'll be calling you a radical, a liberal, fanatical, criminal. And I'm thinking, okay, all of a sudden, all this weird stuff Jesus is saying begins to make a little more sense. Make friends for yourself by means of dishonest wealth. Oh, yeah. Because on one level, all wealth is dishonest. Now, I don't mean that we are dishonest or that we have connived and plotted to get what bank balances we have. Jesus, like the sages who came after him, is reminding us that ownership is myth and fiction. We're never owners. We are stewards. Our job and joy is not to possess, but to care for and share with. Our job and joy is to embrace what my dear sister Becca Stevens calls the love economy. Diving deep into the joy of enough for all and the fearless life of never knowing want, because we've not only got each other's backs, we got each other's fronts and sides too. The false gospel of ownership, the idea that true meaning and happiness can emerge from a mindset that something can be mine and not yours, only serves to separate us from each other and further line the pockets of those among us, and this includes me, who most benefit from this system at the expense of the most vulnerable and to the enslavement of all. And yeah, if you want to start calling me a radical and a liberal, fanatical and criminal, recognize that first, if you're going by the world's definitions, you are most certainly correct. And that if you're going by the world's definitions, so was Jesus and so were his disciples. Because Jesus went to the cross for saying things like this. Jesus went to the cross because he turned to the poor and became dangerous to the government. And the founding principle around which his first followers gathered after the resurrection, it's right there in the Bible. It's clearly stated in Acts 2. It says, all were together and had everything in common, selling their possessions and goods they shared with anyone who was in need. It's really interesting. The first promise of our baptismal covenant is, to gather together in, fellowship, the breaking of the bread and the prayers. The very next line in Acts is that one, but we've sort of left that part out. Now, you might even win me over to the scourge of Christian nationalism if that's what they were talking about. Except I have a feeling those among us who were calling loudest for that would be among the loudest opponents of actually having a Jesus-shaped nation. All were together and had everything in common, selling their possessions and goods they shared with everyone who was in need. Watch what you say, they'll be calling you a radical. Except as Aja Monet sings in her 3-line poem, Undressing a Wound, radically loving each other is the only everything worth anything. And I know this. I really do know this. I just forget it most of the time. I know this because I have held my newborn child in my hands. I know this because I have laid in bed with a lover and opened my heart in the safety of their embrace. I know this because I have held my father's hand and watched his heart rate on the monitor go from 60 to 30 to 20 to 0. I know this because I have stood in the streets with brave, young, black, queer images of God and seen the beauty of their courage as they claim the power of their humanity. I know this because as bananas as the world is right now, as deep as the temptation to hopelessness is, here we are, breaking bread and sharing a cup and listening to words of love 2 millennia old from a source way older than that. Jesus stood before Pilate and said, my kingdom is not of this world. Jesus reminds us that we get to be in this world and not of this world. And Jesus also tells us this morning that we cannot give ourselves to the pursuit of deep love and the pursuit of ownership and wealth at the same time. It just doesn't work. Now, the other truth is we don't have to do it all at once. Few people have, few people can. I certainly haven't. We don't have to do it all at once. Prophet and martyr Oscar Romero reminds us we accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete. We plant the seeds that one day will grow. We lay foundations that will need further development. We are prophets of a future not our own. I keep reminding myself that when I get frustrated with the world and get frustrated with myself. It's like we are prophets of a world not our own, of a future not our own. And we lay that foundation that Romero is talking about with every incremental step in the long labor of love. We lay the foundation every time we join hands and look deep into each other's eyes and pledge to take that next step of the journey together and say, I got you and you got me. We lay the foundation sometimes just by noticing and asking questions. By noticing, hey, we have a government that continues to take our tax dollars to line the pockets of those among us who are addicted to this toxic theology of ownership, and then to bomb and starve children in Gaza while leaving children here without education, health care, and increasingly without hope. To take notice and ask, is that what an economy of love looks like? Is this who we want to be? Is this who Jesus says? Is this who I say that I am? To take notice that a government that is supposedly by the people and for the people has increasingly failed to not only fulfill, but to even give lip service to the very basis for its claim to authority, its pledge to provide for the general welfare, to take notice and say, is this what an economy of love looks like? Is this who we want to be? Is this who Jesus says? Is this who I say that I am? We lay the foundation every time we claim the joy of not only resisting tyranny, but embracing the joy of creating new and fun ways to care for each other. Ways like you have done here at St. Thomas for the beautiful Afghani images of God who have become part of this community. And we say, wow, maybe that is the economy of love. Maybe that's what that looks like. Is that what Jesus wants us to be? Is that who I am? We lay the foundation every time we live a little more into the reality that our real insurance policy is not paid for by those ever-escalating premiums, but is our common pledge to be there for each other in the best of times and the worst of times. Every time, in the words of the great prophet Greg Boyle, we gather at the margins until the margins disappear under our feet. Every time we have just a little bit more of the desire to have our morality catch up with and eventually surpass our money. Every time individually and together we strive to live a little bit more like those first followers of the revolutionary Jesus who were together and had everything in common, selling their possessions and goods, sharing with anyone who has need. It starts small. Every revolution starts small with noticing, with questioning, with a conversation, an embrace, a listening ear and a soft heart, with help given and sometimes more difficult help received. Jesus' revolution of love continues as it always has, with moments of courage that we find in each other's eyes and arms, with standing up for justice and against oppression, not out of guilt or fear, but because we discover bit by bit one life, one love, one moment of choice at a time that truly, radically loving each other is the only everything worth anything. And we will be called radical, liberal, fanatical, criminal. We will be dangerous to the government, and we will be called it, and my favorite, we will be called hopelessly naive. I got the emails to show you. And we might even find ourselves like Jesus standing before the throne. And when we do, we might remember his promise that not only is that what is supposed to happen, but when it does, God will not only be with us, but claim us as God's own, and is even going to give us the words to speak. That's in there too. And then, at night, all the world's asleep and the questions run so deep, we will gaze at each other and the entire world and love and say, you know what? I don't wonder anymore. I can tell you who and whose I am.